Good morning. This is John Hawley from SEALs in Recovery. This is our second podcast, and as promised, I would have another SEAL on here, a retired SEAL, and I'd like to welcome to SEALs in Recovery podcast Evan Thompson.
Hey, John.
How's it going?
It's awesome.
Thanks for coming out and supporting the cause. So, As you know, with my the first podcast, Evan's a co-founder of SEALs in Recovery, and he works a great program. He has taken his recovery to the next level, especially on the service side of things. And I will let Evan talk to you about his journey in recovery. But first of all, I'd like to know, Evan, about where you grew up, your family, what got you into the Navy, your SEAL career, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John. I'm Evan. I'm an alcoholic, and just happy to share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope with y'all. So I grew up in Iowa. Proud to be an Iowan. I always say I'm a native of Iowa, even though I don't live there anymore. Really great childhood. Parents are very hardworking, very dedicated, really cared a lot of us, but, typical Midwestern, very unemotional kind of family, but a very loving family at the same time. My father worked a lot, worked 70-hour weeks, but he always showed up when, something was going on, whether I had a swim meet at the Y, swim meet in high school, some event in school, my dad was always there. My mom, was always there also. She was a homemaker until I was about 9 years old. Then she went off to work. And great parents. I had one older brother that was a good older brother most of the time, but being an older brother, 4 years older, he was pretty hard on me. And being the little brother was tough for him, I imagine. But he developed some trauma and just challenges in my young life. Two great grandparents that I spent a lot of time with. My grandmother, who really, helped me out a lot on a lot of things, growing up, really a key part of it growing up. In high school, I was a swimmer, and my father never knew how to swim, which I found out much later in life. So he made sure my brother and I knew how to swim. And my brother was a good swimmer. He got accepted to the Air Force Academy, was a water polo player, All-American, and excelled at the Air Force Academy as a water polo player. And so, as I was, getting ready to think about maybe going to college, because the only way I could go to college if I got a scholarship. I wasn't a good enough swimmer to get a scholarship, or if I got ROTC, I wasn't smart enough to get ROTC, was maybe go to the service academy, let my swimming skills and my okay academic standards get me in there. So brother said, don't go to the Air Force unless you know your eyes are going to be 20/20 when you graduate. Didn't know that for sure, so didn't go there. Said don't go to West Point because everything's great at West Point. The buildings are great, the uniforms are great, the people are great. Don't go to West Point. So that leaves me with the Naval Academy. So applied to the Naval Academy and got accepted. Congressional appointment. Went to the Naval Academy July 6th of 1978, and that started my Navy career. But my drinking career started in high school, and I had my first drink when I was 14. And after the state swim meet, after season keg, I drank, and as I reflect upon it, I got sick that night, and every time I drank, there was never just one drink. And and during high school, and when swim season started, I stopped drinking throughout swim season. But when swim season ended, I drank. I drank, not every day, but we would go out, on the weekends, and every time one of my buddies would buy a 6-pack, and there's 4 of us in his car, I would always have at least 2 of them. And that, I didn't know at the time, but was maybe the start of my alcoholism. So I went to Naval Academy, and again, I was looking for a college education, potential career, and that first semester, after the first 4 weeks, I had a 0.2 grade average. That was a 0.2, not a 2.0, a 0.2, which means I wasn't going to graduate. If I didn't do something about it, they were going to throw me out. And we were the first Naval Academy class as freshmen, as plebes, to be allowed to drink on the weekends. And of course, I drank every weekend those first 3 weeks. So,
More than 2 beers, I guess?
Absolutely. So I remember getting that first grade card. I went to the chapel and said, I won't drink during the academic year if you just get me through this experience. And, I got through that first semester, obviously went home on Christmas break, started drinking, all whatever, but the whole time just hoping I'd make it through. I ended up that first semester with a 2.02. So, hey, that works when I don't drink. My mind's clear, I can study, I can get through this place. And so that was my effort throughout my Naval Academy time there was, don't drink during the academic year, but during any holidays, any Christmas break or during the summer, I would drink. And maybe not to excess, but most of the time I drink a lot. And it wasn't a big deal. That's what sailors do. That's what sailors do.
What attracted you to the SEAL community? You're trying to go through books. Yeah. Was it your swimming background?
No, not at all.
Something you met along the way?
Yeah, guys I met along the way. I had great guys at the Naval Academy that were SEAL instructors. Ace Sarich, Silver Star from Vietnam, Chris Lambert, Bill Payne, and just some really, neat guys that I said, wow, that's pretty cool. And at the Naval Academy, they had a program where, you could give up 3 weeks of your summer leave, go play at Buds for 3 weeks. And you did a week of first phase, a week of second phase, a week of third phase. And also during that summer, you go to the surface guys for a week, the submarine guys for a week, the Airedales for a week, and the Marines for a week. And after that summer, I realized the best guys in the world that I wanted to serve with were in the SEALs. So I said, yeah, okay, how do I get there? Because, back in 1976, 5 guys went to the Naval Academy and 4 of them quit. And Admiral Rickover said, nobody from the Naval Academy is ever going to go to SEAL training again. But fortunately, Admiral Rickover was forced to retire right before our service selection, and myself and Kevin Baugh were selected to go to SEAL training. So through a process of physical screening, interviews, and class rank, I got one of the 2 slots to go to SEAL training. So graduated at the end of May, reported to class 120 in the beginning of June, and started training. And great time. I was a rollback.
So what's one thing that's very interesting is Evan went through training before me, but can you discuss what the pipeline was there? You got your orders, you got there, and then you classed up. There was no pre-training. Yeah. There was no selection before training. You classed up and you went into training, right?
Yeah. That's I showed up on a Thursday and got my head shaved on a Friday, and started, it was called pre-training those first 2 weeks, but it was really training. It was a big lie.
Right.
And, some guys who were there a few weeks before, they were hanging out, doing calisthenics, getting yelled at a little bit, but, there was nothing that prepped me for what I walked into. And I had a really good leader, in my first class leader, and Jim O'Connell, and he kind of said, okay, this is what we got to do, boys. And so I made it through class 120 Hell Week, and Doug, who so you might be on a later podcast.
Oh, he will be.
Was in my.
He's being voluntold to come on our podcast, so his name is Doug McQuarrie. He's one of the founders as well.
Yeah. Well, so Doug was in my boat crew, and I didn't realize this till 30 years later, but during Hell Week, I broke my neck. And I broke it down at the mud flats. I dove in head first in the mud, and I broke my neck, and I went unconscious. And him and another guy pulled me out of the mud. And since I had the best dive, we got 15 minutes of sleep. Well, I was unconscious those 15 minutes. And so, like most guys after Hell Week, my neck really hurt, my whole body hurt, and all that. So, my proctor said, hey, you're doing okay. We'll roll you back. So went into class 121 and graduated with class 121. And one of the things, that I was always very interested in was the STV program. Yep, I'm weird. I like STVs,
He's still in the maritime community working for a boat manufacturer.
So, and Ace Sarich, taught a class actually, and we built, designed our own STVs. So it always interested me. So I volunteered to go to UDT 22, Last of the Frogmen. And, went to STV school, right after Buds. And I was thinking about maybe I'll change my orders to the West Coast. But if I would have stayed on the West Coast, I probably would have died, because STV school, while strenuous for 2 or 3 days a week, was not that strenuous. I was drinking a lot. Pacific Beach, I could tell you all the haunts up and down there back in the day. No, I couldn't, because I was drunk all the time. I couldn't remember anything.
I think you remember the Beachcomber.
Yeah, the Beachcomber.
There you go. And I think it's still out there.
But it was California, and I needed to leave California. So not that I knew it, but it was a geographic change to get away from my alcohol. So, checked aboard, UDT 22, converted over to STV Team 2, young ensign and full of vinegar, doing good, not drinking a lot, but, every Friday there's a keg and I drink and, that's what we did. You new guy, that's how you got your trident back in those days because you had to prove yourself with the team for 6 months before you got your trident.
That's 6 months after STT, SEAL Tactical Training.
No, it's 6 months, after I checked aboard the team. So
before STT?
Well, back in my day, we had what was called advanced operator training for the STT guys.
Okay. Oh, I got you.
So then, you go through AOT, and then, after 6 months, and AOT could be included in that for us. They could award your trident. So it took me about 8 months or so. Tommy Hawkins gave me my trident. And, but there was no quality SQT or anything like that. You showed up your team and you had to prove yourself to the team. I had to sit on a board of chiefs, senior chiefs, master chiefs, and a board of officers, but part of that was what they saw of you, leading up to that point. And part of that was being at the keg on Fridays. If I hadn't been there, who knows if I could have got my trident.
And it was a straight line vote, thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There wasn't any of this seasoning. Similar pipeline is you got to your team and they would say, you're deemed good enough to go to STT. You go to STT, it was ran by the teams back then. Then you get back to your command and they give you 4 to 6 months to give you a thumbs up and thumbs down.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys didn't get their birds.
Yeah.
And they got sent to special boat unit or they set an ordinance or a comms until their enlistment was up, and they never got their NEC as a SEAL, and either went out to the fleet or just got out of the Navy.
Yeah, I think my class 121, we graduated about 35 or so people, and there's 3 guys who never got their tridents. Buds graduates went to a team that deemed thumbs down, and and good guys. It's just the team didn't want them for whatever reason. So, so I get my trident, and I'm kind of mucking around as an AOIC, and then, they fired an OIC, and as a young JG, the CEO at the time said, hey, I'm going to give you a platoon. I go, oh my gosh, and so I got a platoon, deployed to the Mediterranean, first deployment, great platoon, got in trouble though, twice, got put in hack. And hack is what we do in the Navy is when they tell you can't go on liberty. You got to sit on the ship. Well, okay, I'm a JG, I'm a hack. It's a badge of honor. That's something to write home about. My, monthly letter to the CO. Then I got put in hack when I came back from deployment because I drank on the way back home from deployment on the ship. And so my promotion was delayed, to lieutenant. I had been selected for lieutenant. Back in those days, you frocked, but I didn't get promoted.
What were the incidents? They were related around alcohol.
Yeah.
Were they out in town? Were they fights? Were they shore patrol and get beat up with the billy club? What was the story behind those things?
Well, the one where I got put in hack is just, I was pretty disrespectful along with a number of the other guys in my platoon to the shore patrol officers about it was time to go home because we were too drunk. Well, for frogmen, hey. Then, coming back from deployment, I decided drinking on the ship would be a good idea. And so I drank on the ship and got caught doing it, and so, hey, but these are the things we did in the teams. These are what made us. And, got back from that deployment, continued on at SCV. They asked me to extend, make another deployment, made another deployment,
all marks?
What's that?
All marks?
No. The second deployment was actually on the submarine USS John Marshall. We had a full SCV platoon, dry deck shelter platoon on the John Marshall. It was the first East Coast deployment like that, and it was cool. And then, right before that deployment, my wife Vicky, my fiance, not even my fiance at the time, my girlfriend at the time said, you're going on deployment, and I just got an orders coming back to that deployment to go to the United Nations Truth Supervision Organization, UNSO.
Israel, right?
Yeah, Israel in Egypt for a year, and it was unaccompanied. And she said, well, when you come back from this deployment, unless we're engaged to be married and get married, I'm not going to be around. So I said, hey, okay, we'll get married. So we got married when I got back from that deployment, May of '87, and boom, 10 days later, I'm off to Egypt. I spent 5 months in the Sinai Desert. Great experience going around, but every night there's a bottle of wine, that's what you did. You had a foreign, UN member with you, and that was expected. The French brought their French wine, the Americans brought their American wines, the Irish brought their Guinness, you brought your Budweiser. I mean, these were the things you did as a United Nations Troop Supervision, observer. So did my 5 months there. And
the Sinai then and now is a very, very hot contested area.
Yeah.
It's not a low-level operation out there. I know that from being over there.
Yeah, the Sinai was interesting, but the real interest came in, I was working in Alexandria, and the UN headquarters in Jerusalem for our organization called up and said, hey, we think something's going on in Gaza. Go check it out. This was the first intifada that occurred, and I drive my UN vehicle over there, 3 broken windows later, dodging multiple burning tires. I come back across the border. The Egyptians' eyes are this big, and I call the UN and say, "Hey, I got some damage to my vehicle." They go, "What's going on?" That was the first intifada occurred in 1987 over it started in Gaza, and obviously that's never been resolved. But in December of '87, we got ordered to the Promised Land, to Israel. Went up to northern Israel, a place called Nahariya. I used to go to work every day over in Lebanon, and my wife Vicky stayed in northern Israel. Had a wonderful time, except had some tragic incidents occurred. I had a very good friend, an Australian, get hit by an IED and died. Another good friend, a Canadian who was with him, he got his leg blown off on serious TBI. And it really hit me hard. I had been on that road, 2 days before. That could have been me, but it wasn't. Then, about a month later, my boss, Marine Lieutenant Colonel Rich Higgins, got kidnapped by Hezbollah, and in
Beirut.
In Tyre. Then he got taken up to Beirut.
Yeah. Then he was killed, right?
Yeah.
It's a good story. If you, it's not a great story, but it's very interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know you knew him.
Yeah, Colonel Higgins was. I'd been the military advisor as a Marine Lieutenant Colonel to Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, and as a Marine in 1988, 87. Where do you go if you want to go to war at that time? And the only place that could qualify where you saw war going on for a U.S. soldier was go to the UN, go to Lebanon. And that's what he did, but he also carried his resume with him, and they nabbed him, and they eventually killed him. Again, pretty traumatic. I mean, I'm a young lieutenant, and I'd seen him that very morning, and he'd driven up to Tyre, which was beyond the UN protection zone, to meet with some individuals. And I kind of warned him. I goes, "Boss, I'll go with you. What I got to lose? I'm a lieutenant. Nobody's going to mess with me." Yeah. And he goes, "No, I got this." And I got this. Prophetic words. And he got nabbed in southern Lebanon. They quickly evacuated up to Beirut, where he's lost in the mess. And nobody did anything about it. The UN was paralyzed by it. The Israelis kind of laughed about it, and he's dead. He's got a ship named after him. But
he does?
Yeah. So left that tour.
And what year was that, Evan?
What's that?
What year was
87, 88. He got kidnapped in 88, February. Came back, took orders SEAL Team 2. Absolutely loved SEAL Team 2. Went through STT at the time. Learned a lot. Broke my leg during STT. So, spent 3 months kind of hobbling around. Started STT back again. Finished STT. Got in a platoon. Great platoon. We got, we were the platoon. We were the best platoon, even though we weren't the contingency platoon. When a contingency came up, they sent my platoon over the Mediterranean because of things that were going on over in the Eastern Med. It was great. I got stuck on a submarine for 67 days. It sucked. My squad did. The other squad, got stuck on an amphib. And we came back, and I was so pissed because we were the platoon that was supposed to go into Panama, and Ed Coughlin's platoon got it, and I got screwed. Instead, I got to sit in the locker room at Christmas during the Panama invasion. And but that's life in the teams. Things don't always go the way. So we continued working up, kept most of the platoon together. Then we deployed in August of '89, and right when Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. So we were scheduled to go on deployment. We went on deployment, and as soon as we got to the Mediterranean, they decided we're going to send you to the Red Sea. We spent a lot of time bouncing around a couple different carriers, supporting any maritime interdiction operations that the U.S. might want to conduct. We only conducted one the entire time we were there. Exciting, it's what we trained to do. I would much rather have been part of the famous task force that was in the desert, but that wasn't my calling at the time.
How was your drinking when you got to 2 STT? And because I know being at SEAL Team 2 for quite a number of years is a big drinking culture and a big hazing command, and other teams actually stayed away from our side of the compound for that reason on Fridays.
Yeah, we drank hard. There's no doubt about that. And that was the culture. You drank hard, you played hard, you operated hard, and you kept the standard. And part of that standard was to be the greatest operators we could be, but also be the greatest drinkers. And going up to AP Hill, I mean, every single night, there was beer. And, I remember our final quest in STT, the first, 4 or 5 checkpoints were alcohol-free. The last 12 were filled with alcohol. I remember, a guy getting teeth broken, all kinds of bad things.
Just for LandNav, like LandNav course, so that's good.
Yeah, and, it just wasn't, but it was accepted. And I did my part. I drank, and that's, and it was never just one. I always made sure I set the standard when it came to drinking. I led the way. Just like I led, operations, I led the way in drinking too. So, left SEAL Team 2 after Desert Storm, went back to STVs. And the whole time, my drinking isn't a daily thing. But when I drank, I drank. It was never just one. And did I get drunk every time? Nope. But it was never just one. Left SEAL Team 2. I left STV Team 2. Got the best set of orders I've ever had, and that was going down to Unit 4 in Puerto Rico. And I was a CO down there as a lieutenant commander. It was awesome. But it was a drinking culture.
So you were down there with Andy Tefelsky?
Yeah.
And Dan Heyman?
Not Dan Heyman.
Dan Heyman was Rock Blaze down there yet?
Rock Blaze was there. I got down there. Bud Dennehy was my first command master chief.
Got you, right.
Then Andy Tefelsky was my second one. But, I had 5 master chiefs, at a command that was only 25 people, and they were all good frogmen. We drank. And, there was an incident down there where a drinking incident that I wasn't involved in.
The guy who threw strapped to a chair?
Nope.
That was a bad one, too.
That was a bad one, too. This is a guy...
so there was a dry dock there in Puerto Rico. And
he involved the dry dock.
This was a dry dock thing. So the dry dock was for, I guess, big battleships, whatever.
Yeah, World War II.
So they took the doors off it, so it was no longer a dry dock. And there was actually at about 20 feet of ledge, right?
Yeah.
There was a ledge at 20 feet, then it went down to the abyss.
40 feet.
They hazed the guy. And they threw him over the side, strapped to a chair, thinking he was going to get out. And he, thank God, landed on that edge, and somebody went down and recovered him. He lived. Yeah. So that was a bad one.
Well, my bad one was guys were drinking, and it was a pretty open drinking environment. And they threw a guy in, and he ended up in the hospital in a coma. And lo and behold, the coma wasn't because he got thrown in his head. His coma was because he had meningitis. But it's brought out the whole drinking culture that was occurring down there. So big investigation, blah, blah, blah. So we actually had to install a drinking lamp. And, Frank Mulcahy, a guy I respect the hell out of him.
He's a white Sammy Davis Jr. He looks like Sammy Davis Jr.'s white brother. He's got the same crazy eye, and Frank's a good guy, and he would not mind me saying that. So after the guy with meningitis, that thing happened, did they stop the coconut run?
No, we still did them. Okay. I had authorization.
Maybe as long as the drinking light was on, you could do the coconut run.
Yeah.
You might want to explain the coconut run to the mere mortal.
I can't remember him. I was so drunk.
It had to do a perk a point and carrying a coconut and drinking whatever they called it, jungle juice, and you were blind running up to perk a point and back.
I mean, Bacardi,
carrying a coconut.
Bacardi was a buck a bottle.
That and cruising rum, which you couldn't get in the United States at that time.
Cruising confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, we would take trips over to St. John's, to do environmental work. And we would go over and we'd clear the park, working with the park rangers to lift up all the old tires and all that had been sunk over the year to help preserve the park. But, okay, so you can only dive during the day? At night, we'd roll into St. John's, and the cruising was free. The Cokes were $1. Yeah, I bought one Coke for the night, and we would drink bottles of cruising until that bar would throw us out. And boom, boom, me and Rock, and the rest of us would go to the next bar.
Now, did you guys take the ASTV over there?
Yeah, the ASTV. Yeah.
So the ASTV was the ultimate party boat for Puerto Rico.
It was.
It was a bigger LCM with a pilot house and a ramp that went down in front.
LCU.
It was a converted LCU, and it went on many a booze cruises.
Yeah.
To those islands and over to Vieques.
Oh yeah. And so
how the Navy has changed.
Yeah. But that incident with the meningitis. Being the good student that I am, I pulled out all the regulations, and the commanding officer can authorize drinking within his command. And I had to go explain this to the base CO, to my Commodore, everybody else. I go, yeah, I didn't authorize it, so shame on me. And got a non-punitive letter for my lack of discipline and authority and all that kind of stuff. But I established procedure. Again, Father Frank. He would always be the designated guy, no matter who wanted to drink. Here comes Father Frank, and Father Frank put me through training, so I had a lot of respect for Father Frank.
Amazing man.
So finished up there, obviously a heavy drinking culture. And then I went to Command and Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. A great year, kicked my butt. Drank hardly at all.
Was that like post-grad work? Or what was that?
It was like post-grad work. As a Command and Staff College, I got my master's while I was there at a local university. So it was a hard year of work.
Any other SEALs there?
Nope, only SEAL. And so,
you did what you wanted.
Yeah, I can tell any story. It's it was funny because there's I'm a 04 at the time. A lot of Army 04s, and they're all huge Desert Storm veterans. The whole war that was fought for 2 days. They're all strutting their stuff, and it was a good experience. Met some great guys. Really a great joint experience. Met some great guys from officers from Special Forces, Green Berets, Rangers. Good tour, but busted my butt. And lived close to home, so I could go see my mom and dad. It was good. Left there, went down to Tampa. Worked as a staff officer for 2 years. Then I was General Schoonmaker's aide de camp for my last year there. Just a tremendous experience. And again, drinking was somewhat under control. I drank on occasion, but not all the time. But when I drank, there's never just one. And,
was there flack at home with Vicky at that point?
No.
Or no?
Life's good.
Okay.
I mean, we're both busy. She's got her career. She's a civil servant. Mm-hmm. I've got mine. Things are going well. Leave there in 99. Go command STV Team 1 down in Hawaii. And there was some big challenges there. So really, put my nose to the grindstone. Worked hard with command. But when I drank, it wasn't all that often. I drank a lot. I got drunk. And so here's this series of events that I'm not drinking all the time, but...
What year was that, Evan?
99 to 2001.
So were you over there when that sub burned up? The batteries that...
No, that was after I left.
Oh,
I was there when
you can read about that. They didn't rebuild it.
No. No. But, some challenges, but, left the command, better than when I got there, and that's always the goal of commanding officer, and great people working there together and all that. So we leave, Tampa, and I leave Hawaii, and I have all the desire to go back down to Tampa. I liked the staff. I liked what I was doing down there. And but Bob Harwood said, no, you're going to come be my chief of staff at Group 1. And that was in August of 2001. I didn't think I was going to stay much longer in the Navy. I respected Admiral Harwood, so I said, yeah, sure, I'll come be your chief of staff. And a month later, 9/11 occurs. They changed my direction for the next 11 years. Admiral Harwood left. You go fight in Afghanistan and Iraq. I was able to run the staff. Tremendous learning experience, and it was a good tour. Really, the hours I was putting in, didn't really have a chance to drink. But when I drank, it was to excess.
I think that's a lot of SEAL stories. With our SEALs in recovery, that's what we find when the guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They color in the lines with that free time. It seems to get us, whether it's at home or on deployment.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so everything's going great. And then I leave Group 1, I go down to JSOC, where I was a Deputy J3 for the first 2 years and the J8 for the last year. And so I go over to Iraq in October of 2003, and pretty significant event occurred in my life that really disturbed me a lot, and I think really kind of drove me on the road and thinking alcohol was the solution. And it was in December that we had a cavalry troop assigned to us, 4 M1 tanks and 8 Bradleys, and we used those for blocking positions in the city when we needed them. And my cavalry troop commander, young captain, Army captain, comes in and says, "Hey, I only got 2 Bradleys up in 1 tank," and I just went absolutely apeshit on him. My ego was out of control. Here I am. I'm the acting commander. The commander who was, Admiral McRaven, Rear Admiral McRaven. He'd gone over to Afghanistan, and I was letting down my operational, my door kickers by not having,
What assets were they supposed to have?
They're supposed to have 4 tanks and 8 Bradleys.
So they had 1 M1 and 2 Bradleys.
Yeah.
So your M1 is your main battle tank.
Yeah.
A Bradley's a beefed up armored personnel carrier.
So we use these to set up blocking positions, and then the task force, the ground guys, the Tier 1 force really needed this, and I can't do things if I don't have the right blocking force. So I just absolutely let my ego get out of control and crapped all over this captain and said, "You better have all this stuff back up in the next 48 hours." Well, it rolls downhill. So he, crapped on his first sergeant, who crapped on all of his guys, and so they started, a maintenance, extravaganza, driving their vehicles over to the first cav maintenance facility, and at 36 hours, I get a phone call that 3 guys had just been run over by a tank in their Humvee. As if one of their tanks was coming back, these guys are going to do maintenance. I got to see 3 guys that had been run over by a tank, and I felt extremely responsible for that. And the rest of the deployment, I had everything up and running, but that hung over me. And, it was a great deployment. The task force captured Saddam Hussein. I should have been exuberant. Things should have been great, but I went into an emotional spiral because of that. And, guys that died in combat, and, going into rooms, I understood that, but I didn't understand, I felt responsible, completely responsible for those 3 young soldiers dying. I remember, flying back from, Iraq on that deployment and stopping in Ramstein and running to the package store and buying a case of German beer with the intent of bringing it home, but none of it made it home. I drank most of it there, in Germany, and the rest of it on the plane.
Was it a bitter or was it Hefeweizen? What actually?
Hefeweizen.
Nice, right? Did you have some lemons to put in it?
No.
No, okay, just wondering.
And it was warm.
Okay.
Like German beer should be.
Yes. Did you drink it out of an Nalgene bottle or just cracked it open?
Cracked it open.
Okay.
Aircrew says you can't do that. I go, yeah.
Watch me.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of led to, the start of, a long-term spiral into my alcoholism. I would stay sober every other rotation that I went overseas on with the task force. But as soon as I got to Germany, I was drinking. When I was home, I was drinking. Was I drinking every day? No, maybe not every day, but close to it. Left JSOC, got a great last command opportunity at Group 4. Absolutely loved it. Great, guys to work with, the SWICs, developing boats at the time and doing operations around the world. But my drinking stayed with me. And a lot of things revolved around my drinking. I never, I'd go out and have a beer with a guy, but I come back to my room and have, a couple shots of whiskey. One was never enough. And it just developed from that, So I'm finishing up that tour, and they asked me to go down to SOC South to be the deputy. Not real excited about that, but that's what the community asked me to do. Went down there, had 2, years of being the deputy at SOC South. Wasn't all that great, coming from Group 1 for 2 years, JSOC for 3 years, Group 4 for 2 years, pretty high tempo. All of a sudden I'm at SOC South, and there's a lot of challenges there. And I would say I drank almost every night. Just to calm my nerves, just to get over the frustration. Then, my final tour, and that's as a geographic bachelor. So, my relationship with Vicky is still real good. I'm not home all the time, but it's still good. I go to, leave, SOC South and go to the Pentagon for my last 18 months. I'm drinking every day there. and geographic bachelor again. Nobody's keeping me in check. I'm doing my job, but that's about it. I'm doing the best, that I can, and not being drunk at work, but looking forward to that drink when I get home. Again, weekends are starting to get a little bit worse when I'm coming home on the weekends. The way and treatment I'm giving my wife, with that time, it's 25 years we've been married. It's just, what the fuck, and this is on me. I thought I had a great career. I thought I was going places. I thought I might be an admiral, and all that was kind of shot down, when I left Group 4, and went down to SOC South. I was Terminal 06. What the fuck? So, I retired in 2012, and the first thing I did was make a bike trip across the United States. Drank every single day of that 72 days that I rode my bicycle across the United States. Every single night, I drank. I go to a bar, have a couple beers, a couple shots, have a good time, get on my bicycle, and pedal. 72 days, 4,000 plus miles. Got home, and really was frustrated by a lot of things. Had a great trip and all that, but went to my first job, wasn't for me. Went to my second job, I wasn't for them. And then I'm sitting there trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I'm unemployed. This is late 2012. I get a great opportunity to work for United States Marine Incorporated. So I go start working for United States Marine Incorporated, setting up a maintenance shop here in Chesapeake for them. Kind of slow at first. My drinking's slowing down because I'm focused on this and all that. And things are okay from 12 to 15. I'm focused on work. Vicky's still focused on her work. And but then in 2016, my good friend Tom Bunce leaves USMI. He was the vice president. We brought in 2 new vice presidents that were much younger than me, and I built a big resentment towards them. I got very frustrated with the company. I thought they were a bunch of idiots. Hey, I'm Evan. I'm a retired Navy captain. I'm an operator. You aren't listening to me. I'm just a freaking maintenance manager at a repair facility. Why should they listen to me? But I didn't understand that. So my ego was getting more and more out of control. I'd go home and I'd take that ego to Vicky, and I was just upset. I was angry, and I was drinking almost every single day. And then it compressively gets worse. By 2018, I'm drinking every day. I'm down in a bottle of bourbon almost every single day. I go to the Navy Exchange, buy cases of Woodford Reserve. Cases, not a bottle of Woodford Reserve at a time. I'd wait for Woodford Reserve to go on sale. I'd buy 3 or 4 cases. That lasts me, a month or two. Okay, drinking a bottle every night. I'm not thinking twice about it. I'm just getting angry. I go home, I'd start drinking, I'd pass out. So my relationship with Vicky was just going down the tubes. And,
so what were you crashing tonight? A bottle?
A bottle.
A handle?
Yeah, a bottle. Like a,
The one with the handle?
Woodford Reserve doesn't have handles. We're classy.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're classy. You're a classy drunk. I forgot about that. There is such a thing. Wow, that's strong work, brother.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing this, and it's just, I'm just angry. I'm miserable. I'm treating, Vicky.
This is 2018.
2018. Treating her like crap, and it's just getting worse and worse. And she's had enough of me. And so, I get in trouble. I spend a little time, overnights in the local jail, for public intoxications. Not a big deal. Hey, that's what we all do. We're frogmen. Who cares?
And you were also in marriage jail one, too.
What's that?
You were in marriage jail, too?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in real jail and marriage jail.
Yeah. And so she's filed separation papers. Whatever. Every frogman gets divorced. Who gives a shit? And so this is all going on, during the...
So this alcoholism is now full blown.
Yeah.
You're not facing any reality. Because earlier, and I'm making notes during this, I could go back to your academy stuff. You were 0.2 GPA. You bared down, you did some foxhole praying, you stopped with the drinking, you got to where you're supposed to be. You needed to leave the West Coast because you knew that the drinking was going to be a problem. And it just seemed, then you go through your career, and you have a fine career, got in some trouble, but even when you got out and you had to refocus to find out what you're going to do afterwards, you slowed down, and you knew you needed to slow down drinking to get this job. Yeah. But now it's inverted. Now you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Now the marital issues, work problems. Now you're
got to work problems.
I know, but your ego. But you can see the inversion of just in this dialogue of how it took over your life. because I like to think mostly I talk about a SEALs and recovery meeting is stories are very similar to Evan's and mine, where you're fine at work, but when you're not working, then you get some free time and some money and some status, and then your ego is out of control, and then it inverts, similar to my story. And this is just, it's almost a footprint that exists in our life. Yeah. And we talk about this. People get sober for 4 reasons, or get the heat off. 1, they got a problem at home. 2, they got a problem at work. 3, they got a problem with the law. Or actually 4, they want to get sober, which we are now. But it's so interesting to hear the alleviation of pain. But then all bets are fucking off. You don't give a shit. You're just going to burn it all down. Yeah. So I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah. So finally we get to May of 2019. Separation, jails. Who cares? Our company had our 35th anniversary party, and for 2 months prior, the boss had said, "Hey, we're gonna have an open bar. Watch yourselves." All I heard was open bar.
And he's saying, "Watch myself drink."
And got drunk. The guy looked at me funny, and the next thing I know, 5 guys are pulling me off, and I got asked to leave the party. I didn't care. I went to the casinos, drank some more. Yeah, and this is on Saturday. Sunday I'm flying back home. Everything's wonderful. Yeah, I got thrown out. Who cares? On Monday, the boss is upset, and he says, "I'm coming up to see you." Well, hey, whatever. And he came up to see me and said, "Hey, you're fired. You got a real problem with anger, and you might have a drinking problem." So I go, "Oh, wow. Okay, so the first time in my life since I was 14 years old that I didn't have a job. Wonderful. What the fuck am I going to do? My wife hates me. What the fuck am I going to do?" The only thing I knew was I might have an alcohol problem. Go to a detox. So I check into a detox, Virginia Beach Psych. Spent 2.5 days there. Wonderful people who were really trying to help me, but I did not want to hear it.
Did they take your shoelaces away?
I took slip-ons in because I read the literature before.
Okay, good. Yeah. You can tell people in civilian AA meetings that they come from the psych center. A lot of times they forget to put their shoelaces in, so that guy was in the psych center. So go ahead.
No shoelaces, no belt.
Yeah.
None of that. And made sure I brought the right stuff. Leave my phone in the car.
Remember, he's good at reading instructions because he read the instructions of Puerto Rico how we can get around the drinking. So he read the instructions to the psych center.
So 2.5 days, and finally, at day 2.5, 2 members from the Early Bird Breakfast Club came in, Corky and Tyson, and told their stories.
I saw Tyson this morning at a civilian AA meeting.
And told their stories. And when they went around the room, everybody introduced themselves. I'm, so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic. I just said, "I'm Evan." I didn't know if I was an alcoholic or not. I might have a problem with alcohol, but was I an alcoholic? And Tyson probably gave me the best advice I ever got in my life. He goes, "Read the big book, chapter 3 in the doctor's opinion." Yep. And I responded, "What's the big book?" He goes, "Book Alcoholics Anonymous." I go, "Okay, where'd I get one of those?" That's one of those people out at the desk. So I went out the desk. Yeah. I read chapter 3, more about alcoholism. Read the doctor's opinion, and I knew I was an alcoholic. And I knew there was a solution because they told me about it in the meeting called Alcoholics Anonymous. And so, okay. And then somebody suggested I do, 90 meetings in 90 days. I go, I'm way too busy. Okay, my wife hates me. I'm unemployed. I don't have any time. I got all the time in the world, but I'm too busy. So, left the detox, went to a meeting that night.
What meeting did you go to?
We Are Not Saints.
Down on Shore Drive.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And I still have the sheet of paper from that first night of all the men that signed it and said, "Call me if you think about drinking."
Anybody left on that list that we know?
Yeah. Bob, H, Ross, Surfer Steve, I call him. Yeah. There's 5 or 6 men on that list that, great group. And, okay, I got it. And then a couple days later, I went to a meeting called the Princess Anne Men's Group. Again, another great meeting. Got a couple phone numbers. When I walked out of that meeting, I looked at my phone. I got an email from my security manager, USMI, that said, "Your security clearance has just been revoked." First time in 40 years I've not had a security clearance. Boy, I go, okay, just don't drink. I go home, fall asleep, wake up the next morning. I'm pissed. I'm pissed.
Why are you mad?
Because you've taken something away from me. I can't control it. You have taken something. You've hurt my ego.
That's what I was looking for.
I am somebody. I am Commodore Evan Thompson.
So you
How
didn't.
dare you?
You didn't look at your part in this.
Oh no!
Hell no.
There was no part. I just tried to beat somebody up. That's all they knew.
Yeah.
And so I remember that morning. I called up a guy from the Princess Anne Men's Group, Terry, and said, Terry, I'm feeling, pretty fucking awful. I fucking got my security clearance pulled, da-da-da. He goes, hey, go to a meeting and then give me a call afterwards. Mm-hmm. So I go to the meeting. It's your favorite meeting, the Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club is a good meeting. It's a big meeting. There's a lot of first world problems there. I go to some other meetings besides El Seals and Recovery to get my 6 checked to make sure my sobriety is being nourished with real problems. So that being said, the Breakfast Club is a Breakfast Club.
So I go to the Breakfast Club, and one of the things they do at the Breakfast Club is they hand out something to read at the end. There's a choice of 5 things. So I'm going, I've fucking got 3 days, and this guy named Martin always sits in the back of the room, hands me it doesn't matter, you pick out something, read it. So I'm looking through all these, and I come to acceptance, page 417.
Yeah.
Acceptance is the answer to all my problems. When I'm disturbed, blah, 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 I have to accept it. It's God's will. And that got me over that urge to drink for losing my security clearance for that moment. So, okay, here I am, day 4 of my sobriety. And about day 6 is when I meet, John. And,
so that is very interesting. Breakfast Club is good. My sponsor goes there, and I've been to a lot of meetings there. I had met you. Hadn't I met you prior to that?
Yeah.
And that's how Seals and Recovery kind of got started. And we can go over that another time. But when I saw Evan that morning,
you saw me first at Yana when you picked up your chip.
Yeah.
And then we talked. We didn't talk then because you were too busy.
Yeah. I was getting my chip. It was about me that day, taking my 8-year chip. But my point is we figured out that we're both SEALs. I didn't lead with it, and some people know, but Evan figured out.
I'm in Navy Special Operations.
Yeah, so,
Holy shit.
Yeah, so I could be a SWIT guy, right? Or a support guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, we figured out that he was at 2 when I first got there, and then I met him in Puerto Rico. He solved some Liberty incidents with Andy Sabelski. Richter was down there for that, too. He's in SEALs and Recovery anyways. But when I met Evan that morning at the Breakfast Club, the level of desperation and him wanting to get better, I'm like, I probably said it to him after the conversation, I don't worry about you drinking again. I mean, I've seen this bottom and this look in people's eyes, and if you've been around sobriety for long enough, you could see the desperation and feel it. You could feel it. And I never had to worry about him drinking again, really. I was just more worried about him putting some of this stuff behind him that he's dealt with, and that's always very hard for reconciliation and moving forward. God forgives us, our wives forgives us, our kids forgive us, but we can't forgive ourselves, and it's very, very hard. But he's gone on to do great things, and I'm going to let him continue his story.
All right. Well, so, here I am. I'm mucking through, my first month's of sobriety. And what I knew by reading, more about alcoholism and starting to read the big book and getting a sponsor is that the thought of ever taking another drink had to be murdered.
It was murdered.
It had to be captured, killed. Not just captured, killed.
It was murdered before you read that chapter.
Yeah, but I had to murder that thought. Because there's a line. There's a line of self-will. There's a line of, God's will, higher power's will, whatever your choice may be. And that line of will, that line of self-will, there's alcohol. Now, all those other things on the side of self-will, my character defects, I can work on, but I have to murder alcohol. So, self-will. I've gone months without drinking. And that's what got me through the first 3 or 4 months of my sobriety, was self-will. Going to meetings, listening to other people, just not picking up a fucking drink. Because I had a hard time figuring out higher power. I really, wasn't raised in, a religious or spiritual household. Never forced on me, even though my parents are very spiritual. It never forced on me, so I never grabbed onto it. And it wasn't until I made a trip out with a friend to Montana. I'm sitting out there fly fishing. It kind of came to me, I didn't make the mountains. I didn't make the beautiful sky. I didn't make the stars. I didn't make these beautiful trout in the streams. I didn't do nothing of that. So there must be something greater than me. And once I came to realize that there's something greater than me, I could turn my will and my life over to it. Because I'd certainly turned my will and my life over to Uncle Sam and the Department of Defense for a number of years.
For a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah. I could turn myself over to that higher power that created this beauty of our world and these wonderful people that have been trying to help me stay sober for the last, 4 months. And once I did that, step 4, I'd been lying about doing my step 4, writing it down. I went back and, boom, it all flowed. It all got written down. Then, sitting down with another man, sharing, those things with them, and sitting down with the priest and sharing some things that I did not want to burden another man with. I wanted that sense of confidentiality. And it worked. I got it all out. And
did you not want to burden other people by your problems? Because I'm going to say something in a second, but you just said that you didn't want to burden another person.
I didn't want them burdened because of the confidentiality, because of the bad things I had done. Mm-hmm. I didn't want them to someday get called in front of a grand jury and have to tell them what I did.
I got it.
So this is maybe somewhat protecting my ego. Probably that's what I was thinking at the time, because were they that bad? Yeah, they're pretty bad. But, it's grand jury ever come after me? No, but my ego at that time told me. But, the big book told me I could, as long as I shared it with that's why. So I think the ego drove it more.
Because when I asked this question, the relevance of the question is that SEALs aren't great at asking for help or spilling their guts. We're great at helping people, great at fixing other people's gear, gear squared away. But the thing is, it's very hard for SEALs to, probably anybody to ask for help. And what we see in our programs, the guys that struggle with sobriety at first, they won't open up. Yeah. They won't ask for help. They won't pick the phone up. So that's why I asked that question about the 4th and 5th step.
No, picking up the phone is something that, I have not had a problem with in this program, because people emphasize that so much to me. And I talk to people whenever I have a problem. And, and it's, and for me, it's initially that sponsor. But then, when you get, more meetings, you develop a relationship with men that you trust.
Of course.
Guys who have good spirituality, good sobriety, they become your teachers. So you have a whole group of men that you can turn to with any problem that you have to help you. Yeah, initially maybe it's just a sponsor, but I tell you, that Princess Anne Men's Group, there was a whole bunch of teachers there that very early on, I would go into that meeting and say, what is this surrender shit all about? I don't surrender. And they said, you're not surrendering to anybody. You're not surrendering to the Russians, the Chinese, whoever. You're surrendering to your higher power. Not surrendering to booze.
Right.
You've killed that. You're surrendering to a higher power. So getting those kinds of things, being able to ask that question, what the hell do you mean? I could ask those questions when I found a group, and that's what was important, because, SEALs in Recovery may be able to do that for some guys, but it wasn't around when I started. And even today, wherever you are, there is a group somewhere near you, or a group of men you can sit down and talk to and sort out anything.
And that's a great segue. I have a question for you. So that whole group of men, and you find your sobriety is so important, and it's. Evan's it started in 90 and 90. I think I'm on my 5th 99, and we're doing it with a guy out in LA that wants some support and accountability. But the thing is, when I talk about 90 and 90s, I think Evan will agree with me, is the foundational stuff for AA is great with the 90 meetings in 90 days, but you'll go to a lot of different meetings, and you're going to find what meeting you like and the folks you want to be like, because AA is a program of
recovery
and attraction, right? So you find that tribe, and we talk about it. Life is tribal, so go find your tribe. Thrive with your tribe and stay with those people. And Evan talks about the Princess Anne meeting, the folks at SEALs in Recovery, and the other stuff he does. But he's found his tribe that he could pick that phone up, because there is commonality in his recovery, as there are other people. And for anybody that tells you that recovery is one-dimensional, it's omnidimensional in the fact that everybody's recovery is different. If somebody wants some help, and Evan will agree with me, I will tell them how I did it. I'm not going to mandate how you do it. You're going to figure out your own way. As long as you have done the first step, honestly done the first step, 2 and 3 are going to come, 4 and 5 is going to come, and then you're off to the races with the rest one. But the thing is just getting honest in that first step. right?
Yeah.
And you're going to find your way. I was a slow step doer. I didn't want to do them again. It took me 2 years. It took me 7 years to do my last amends because I was still embarrassed of being an alcoholic with this guy. And it was a monetary thing, and I paid him back. And I said, because you didn't have to pay me back. I know what you've done with your life. So my point is, do them fast, do them slow, however you got to do them. Let me digress 1 second. The doctor's opinion to me is so important. Mm-hmm. When I'm working with anybody, the first thing I say is go read the doctor's opinion. Go to 7 meetings in 7 days. We Zoom them, whatever you got to do, go, and we'll talk about it. Like 90% of the people can't even do that, so they don't really want the sobriety, and discuss the doctor's opinion. And the doctor's opinion is written by a doctor, and he's basically saying, the stuff is like the pyramids. I don't know how they were built. I don't know how A works, but it works. Yeah. With a group of drunks. So that's the doctor's opinion. One thing that's very interesting, one thing that you framed about your upbringing is you had an unemotional family, right? Not right or wrong. Then I go to how you talked about the stuff in the Middle East. Higgins got wrapped up and killed. The guys that got ran over in a Humvee. How do you think your upbringing from being an unemotional person has played into the phrase in his teams, when you start walking over dead bodies and you don't look down, there's a problem. How do you think that emotional and those feelings get so suppressed and so deep down that you acknowledge things later in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it just, growing up in the Midwest, a stoic family, I mean, you just suppress it. You got to keep it inside.
Because you got to do a lot of work in the Midwest to survive, whether it's the weather, whether it's your profession. There's no easy living out there.
Yeah, I mean, so, the emotional side of things just doesn't come out. Yeah, people are happy and, they're joyful, but, and people get sad, but it's not, a level of emotional, release and inwards. It's not, it doesn't, you don't wear it. You don't wear your emotions. And, it's,
do you think the suppression of some really traumatic and chaotic events in your life, the suppression of those events played out in your alcoholism later?
Absolutely.
Are you discovering that now in the last few years? I know you work hard on your on your recovery in many aspects. I'm just, because it's happening to me.
I mean, and these come out, the suppression of the emotional things, I think, come out sometimes in your list of resentments that you might have. Is why couldn't I express my pain here? Why couldn't I express my frustration?
You didn't how.
Yeah.
You had no tools to do it. Yeah. You didn't grow up with it. Yeah. You can't invent it.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, so you grow with it, you understand it, and that's where the program helps me to wear my emotions, to have emotions, to be able to, laugh harder and cry harder. I mean, all those kinds of things, the program allows, God to truly enter into my life to share those things that I'm really feeling inside.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's just interesting, the perspective that changes, and I've certainly had perspective changes on many things in my life, and it's a very interesting thing, and I know your career, and I know about your career, and you're a phenomenal operator and officer, but, it's very interesting to see that, to hear you say that, well, you were a career 06 and you got sent down to JSOC. Do you look at your career differently of what happened in your career and the decision that was made to send you down to JSOC? No.
It's something I wanted, mostly for my own ego, to enhance my, operational, not credibility, but my operational breadth of knowledge. I mean, there's a lot of things I regretted in my career before I got sober, but since I've been sober, I am joyful with the career that I've.
Of course, of course. But I guess to simplify that question is as you get some distance from an event, your perspective changes on what it is, why it happened.
Absolutely.
That's what was the nexus of my question.
Yeah. I mean, the whole perspective of everything changes. Once I look at my character defects, I look at my own faults, I ask for those shortcuts to be removed. Everything changes. Everything changes on how I look at things now. I mean, the fact is I was doing the right thing at the right time. Maybe I approached it wrong, but these things happen. And they happen, not because I did them, because it's God's will that they occurred. And I realize that now, where I thought I was the instigator, the catalyst for everything that occurred around me, because I thought I was God. And when you think you're God, everything that happens around you becomes your fault, becomes your glory, becomes everything else. Now, I'm just a child of God, as my good friend Gordon says, and I walk the face of the earth, and I try to do it the best way I can now.
Gordon's in our Seals and Recovery group, and he likes waxing poetic.
Yes.
And he's good. He's a great asset. The great thing about our group is we have a lot of alpha males and the meat eaters, and everybody's got their own perspective. Yeah. But the commonality is sobriety, and it's good. One more thing is, what do you see as with our group is now this month 4 years old, and it's amazing. We've come a long way. What do you see the biggest challenges with folks in new sobriety? You've got 5 years.
Yeah.
What do you see? I know from my 13 plus years, I've seen a great change in how things are done in AA. I think it's gotten a lot, I don't even know the word, I guess kinder, which a lot of people don't need kindness. Our Seals and Recovery is just expect we're a very small community, so the bullshit flags get thrown out very, very quickly. But what do you see are the biggest challenges with guys getting into recovery now? Not only Seals and Recovery, you work with a lot of civilians. I'm just curious because Evan works in the prisons. He does a lot of service work. He has civilian sponsees. He works with spec war guys. He works with our active duty commands. So he does a lot, and I think his perspective on sobriety and where we are now and what you might see in the future is very important to me.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, let me kind of lay it out in two parts here. One, you have to murder that thought of ever taking a drink. It has to completely go away. There's no reason ever to take another drink. Okay? And I challenge everybody, what's the one thing that'll make you go take a drink? Because there's something. It's kind of like that secret Doug always talks about. It's that one secret that'll take you out. What's that one thing that'll make you want to take a drink? And think about it now and what you will do when you want to take that drink. Okay? So I share that story because I thought I had murdered alcohol. But, my wife passed away a little over 2 years ago. Our marriage got back together. We had a wonderful life. I got sober in 19. By, mid-20, it was wonderful. And this is the middle of COVID. We're spending a lot of time together. In 2022, in January, she gets sick, comes down with COVID. In October, she dies. When she died, I knew what would relieve my pain, and that was a drink. I'd wallered around down the steps and the principals while she was in the hospital, cursing at doctors and cursing, being upset at God.
Your insurance stuff, I remember it was a nightmare.
Yeah. This is all, my life. This is a woman I was married to for 35 years, in the military for 25. So she did the moves. She paid the taxes. She paid the bills.
Unaccompanied tours.
Yeah. All those stuff.
Transition out of the Navy.
All that stuff. I'm working through this and I'm trying to deal with it. I'm trying to practice the principle. It's hard. It's hard when someone you love is dying and you're trying to take care of her. And so, I'm working through this and all of a sudden, on day 14 of being ventilated, they say, we got to take the ventilator out and put her in hospice. She's probably going to die. You think I got a lot of faith in this higher power at the moment? Yeah, step 3 starts, washing away. And then when she dies, hope, all my hope vanished. And my life just got unmanageable because she was doing everything. And I thought about a drink. I bought a bottle. The one thing. That was what it was for me. I had never thought about it before because I had no desire to drink until that moment. But I bought a bottle. But I knew I couldn't drink. And I heard enough times in meetings that if I call another alcoholic when I feel like taking a drink, that may prevent me from doing it. And that's what I did. I forgot about praying and meditating and reading literature and all that. But all I remembered was call another alcoholic. I did that. I didn't drink. They reminded me, pray, meditate, go to another meeting, talk to another alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff you hear 1,000 times. But when you're in such pain, you got to remember that one thing And before you get to that one thing that may take you to pick up that fucking drink, what are you going to do?
Pick the phone up and talk to another alcoholic.
Because what is it? You tell me the worst thing they hear in your life. I don't know what it is, but I ask you to think about it. Because if you think about it, before it occurs, you'll know what to do. Call another alcoholic. And our SEALs in recovery, there's not a single thing that's happened to anybody in this world, I don't think, that hasn't happened to one of our members in SEALs in recovery.
Yeah, and
wives died, kids died.
Had to shot a kid through a guy who had a vest on. This guy had to shoot through a kid to kill a guy. I mean, and he has had kids that age. Legal problems, loss of kids, physically losing kids, wives, marital problems, bill problems. So we got basically, the SEAL number classes go from there was two sets of numbers on East and West Coast. So basically from the inception of SEALs, class 0 to we're on the 350s or 60s now.
It's too high.
So, it's too high. So we have guys from class 51, which is the middle of the 60s, right?
Yep.
Late 60s, to class 300
plus.
came in last night. So, and every single conflict, we got guys that unfortunately got kicked out and didn't make a deployment, and that's fine. And we got guys that has, 10 deployments. We got a guy in there that's been to 7 Navy-sponsored rehabs, and he got sober coming to us. But there is nothing you could share with our group that we haven't seen within, a lifespan.
Yeah.
Between tenure and sobriety, loss, career, conflict, Navy issues, but it's a very, very tribal, honest, and transparent group of guys, and the guys that are thriving in our group are the guys that are transparent and they're sharing what's going on.
Yeah, and sharing it all the time, sharing it daily. Get on our thread, share what's going on, reach out to somebody. Hey, it's an amazing group, and the program's amazing. But you got to do the work. You got to take the action. You did that once in your life as a SEAL by taking the action and not ringing the bell. Alcoholism's a lot the same. Just don't pick up the first fucking drink.
All right. I think that'll about do it. Wow. That was an hour and 6 minutes. Well, thank you very much, brother. I love you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Until next week with Doug McQuarrie. He's been voluntold now.